Is the Pope coming soon? This went on for about 4 hours. We walked up and down the streets. We talked to, I would say, maybe 30, 40 different people. Men, women, some of them in hijabs, some of them wearing sort of very revealing clothes, secularists, pious people. We talked to as many people as we could find to get one person to actually say something negative about the Pope. Actually, to even be, even knew that the Pope was on his way to Turkey. We couldn't find anyone. So this went on for about a good day. And at the end of the day, Anderson and I, we called the producers back in New York at CNN, and we said, hey, listen, I know you sent us here to find angry people and to cover these protests, and we can't find anybody. We can't find anybody who's angry or who even cares, for that matter. But we have a better idea for a story, okay? This is the story that we want to tell. We want to tell the story that goes like this, that when you live in a country with a fast-growing economy, where you have actually a job and a house and a car and 2.5 kids and they've got a future ahead of them, turns out it doesn't matter what the Pope says. That when you've got actually a future, you care about that far more than you care about what some guy in Rome has to say about your prophet. That's a great story. Let's tell that story. And the producer from New York, I'll never forget it, said, we paid tens of thousands of dollars to send you to Istanbul to find angry protesters. Find angry protesters. Now, to Anderson's credit, who's a very good journalist, he basically said no. And instead, we flew to Jordan to cover some other story. But I remember that night watching CNN in my hotel room and watching this other camera crew that was there filming angry protesters. And I remember being at that protest. There were about 24 people there, all from a rival political party to the AKP, by the way. They weren't even there for the Pope. All of them whose signs were written in English, by the way, which is a real clue. When you see protesters in a foreign country holding up signs written in English, there's something going on there. It's written for an audience, all written pretty much in the same hand. But CNN got what it wanted. And it was a wake-up call for me at that moment, because I suddenly understood what the media actually is. You see, there's a great debate, I think, in this country about whether the media reflects our fears or whether the media actually promotes fears. There's no question that there is an enormous amount of anti-Muslim sentiment in the media, particularly cable news. I mean, Fox News has managed to spin xenophobia, anti-Muslim fervor into ratings gold for a decade and a half, and good for them. That's their job. See, the problem with the media is that we keep thinking that its primary purpose is to give us information. That's not the primary purpose of the media. The primary purpose of the media is to sell us products. CNN, Fox, MSNBC exists to sell you Coke and Viagra. That's why it exists. Its entire purpose is to get you to the commercial. That's what matters. I have sat in a lot of editorial meetings at these cable news broadcasts. I've also sat in a lot of writers' rooms for late night dramas. I can't tell the difference between the two, because they are both about creating a story that's compelling, that has different chapters in it and acts, and that has sex and violence and fear, and that forces you to watch so that you can get to the commercial. And that's really the primary purpose of it. And it's a reminder to all of us that, like any other commercial enterprise, what the media actually does is simply reflect our values back at us. So that means if there's an enormous amount of Islamophobia in the media, the media is not just making it up. The media is tapping into something that already exists in order to make money. So you can blame Fox News as much as you want to, but it's a pretty good business plan. It sees an enormous amount of anti-Muslim sentiment in the United States, a growing amount of anti-Muslim sentiment. As a matter of fact, today, anti-Muslim sentiment is higher than it has ever been in this country, including in the immediate path of 9/11. That's a market, as far as the media is concerned. Which then brings up this much more uncomfortable fact, which is, then how do we change the media? Or is that even in the cards? And I would say that it's not. This may sound a little bit depressing to some of you, but I don't think that there's any chance of changing the media. I think it's a losing cause. I don't think that it's even worth it, to be honest with you. I mean, look, the people who watch Fox News are an audience that has no interest in having their minds changed. That's why they watch Fox News. The people who watch MSNBC, that's an audience that has no interest in having its minds changed. That's why they watch MSNBC. The people who watch CNN are stuck in an airport. It's really the only reason to watch CNN. And so we stop and think to ourselves, well, you know, if it's a losing cause, battling, you know, these networks, and if I'm sitting here saying that you shouldn't even bother, then that's kind of a depressing reality, isn't it? Sort of. You see, the #1 cable news program on the #1 cable news network is Bill O'Reilly's show, The O'Reilly Factor. Okay? Dwarfs the competition on Fox, which is by far the most watched cable news network in America. But he absolutely dwarfs every other competitor in cable news. The #1, consistently, night after night, the #1 news program on the #1 news network. Do you know how many people watch Bill O'Reilly every night? A little more than 1 million. A little more than 1 million. In a country of 350 million people, a little more than 1 million watch Bill O'Reilly. Do you know how many people watch Big Bang Theory? 20 million. 20 million people watch the Big Bang Theory. Which makes me think, maybe we're focusing on the wrong audience. Who cares about the 1 million people who watch Bill O'Reilly, who, by the way, have no interest in having their minds changed? I mean, yes, it is important, it is valuable to challenge that Islamophobia, to challenge that bigotry, to challenge that ignorance, and God bless the people in this room who do that on a regular basis. But at the same time, I feel like we're fighting the wrong fight. Those of you who know a little bit about me know that I was born in Iran. My family came to the United States after the Iranian Revolution in 1979. I grew up mostly in the Bay Area in the 1980s. Not sure if you remember the 1980s. It wasn't exactly the best time in the world to be either Iranian or Muslim in this country, as opposed to now, and it's awesome. Fantastic now. This was at the height of the Iran hostage crisis. 444 days in which Americans were being held hostage in the embassy, in the US Embassy in Tehran. And as you can imagine, for a 7-year-old kid, this was a very difficult thing for me to reconcile. I was called every name that you can imagine. I was called raghead, I was called camel jockey, which is not fair, because I've never even ridden on a camel in my life. Really not fair. And I was really forced to reconcile with this notion that my identity, who I was as a human being, was being otherized, was being seen as the enemy by the public in a way that I didn't really understand. I didn't know what was going on. And then I would go home after school and I would turn on the TV and I would watch The Jeffersons, and I would watch All in the Family, and I would watch Good Times. And all of a sudden I realized that the sort of issues that I was confronting on a day-to-day basis in the playground were issues that the entire country was grappling with. that the problem wasn't my identity, the problem was that America was having a hard time figuring out who it was, how to reconcile itself to the enormous diversity of its population. You know what taught me about America? Not the news. What taught me about America were sitcoms, popular media. You see, that's how perceptions are truly framed in this country. I would love to sit here as an educator and tell you that the key to changing people's perceptions of Muslims is through education. I would love to say that. I'm actually contractually obligated to say that. They'll take away my tenure if I don't say it. So, okay, I just said it. But it's not true. It's predicated on this false notion that bigotry is a result of ignorance. Oh, if only that were the case. If only bigotry was a result of ignorance, then it would be easy. All we would have to do is educate people and they would stop hating us. You have met Americans, right? That's not how perceptions shift. Because bigotry is not a result of a lack of knowledge. Bigotry doesn't reside up here. Bigotry is about fear. Bigotry resides here. And this is impervious to knowledge. This is impervious to data. You can talk all day about facts and figures about the American Muslim community, and it won't change this. The only thing that changes this is relationships. It's getting to know someone of a different race, of a different color, of a different religion, of a different nationality, as a human being, and not as a symbol of those things, those identities. So, if this is how you change this, if relationships is how you change this, what does that actually mean for us? Does it mean that every one of us should go door to door introducing ourselves? By the way, don't do that. It's just not a good idea. Don't do that. No. What it means is that we have to figure out a way to integrate our thoughts, our values, our morals, our stories, our faith, our very identity into the cultural and religious fabric of this country. How do we do that? TV. That's how we do that. Whatever you want to say about popular media, it has a far greater control over the minds of the people of this country than any news outlet you could possibly imagine. Certainly when it comes to cable news. And so we have to figure out a way to start focusing on the right media if we want people to change their minds. Yes, it's true, we need to confront the bigotry and the ignorance in the news media, that's true. But that, in many ways, is a losing argument. The winning argument is when we begin to engage with popular media. You may recall late last year when Joe Biden, the vice president, went on Meet the Press, and he began to talk about how he had changed his mind on the issue of same-sex marriage. And he sort of said eventually that the president is going to change his mind too. He really kind of pulled the rug out of the president's own speech on that topic. But when he was talking about why he changed his mind, he brought up the fact that the pendulum, the opinion of most Americans about the issue of same-sex marriage in this country has swung rapidly at an unprecedented rate from vast majorities who rejected the notion of same-sex marriage to vast majorities, even among Republicans, even among religious groups in this country who support same-sex marriage. And you know what he said? He said, what actually has played a greater role in that transformation is Will and Grace. Remember Will and Grace? Yeah, sitcom, 30-minute sitcom. And of course, afterwards, the media exploded. Oh, there goes Joe Biden again, talking about, crazy things. Joe Biden's always saying something crazy. Except that he was 100% correct. TV has done a more significant job transforming the way that Americans of all races, colors, stripes, and religions view people in same-sex relationships than anything else, any news article, any social movement, any organization that you can think of. Now, I don't really care about your views on same-sex marriage. My point here is that the power of popular media to change people's minds has to be tapped into by our community if we want to actually confront the overwhelming, unprecedented Islamophobia that exists in this country right now. That puts an enormous amount of pressure on us, people in this room. I understand that most of us have been told by our parents that you really only have 3 options. You can be an engineer, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer. How many engineers in the room, please, honestly? Yeah, there you go. Yes, doctors? Any doctors? Great. How many artists? Yes. Actors? Musicians? Directors? Writers? Until we figure out how to confront this country, how to transform the people in this country, and the way to do that is to tap into the power of popular media, we are going to be on the losing side of this argument over Muslim integration in the United States. It's going to be the artists, the musicians, the directors, the writers, the producers, the people behind the screen, the people in front of the screen, who are going to really change the way that Americans think about Muslims in this country. This is already happening. We have remarkable artists who are on both sides of the camera, people like Hassan Minaj and Asif Manvi, Maz Jabrani, Haz Suleiman, who not only played Jesus in Bill O'Reilly's version of the Jesus story, but is now playing Jonathan of Kings and Prophets on ABC, a show that we're producing. These characters are going to absolutely transform the way Americans think about us. And I'm absolutely so excited to see this film on Imam Husayn as well, because that's, I think, the way forward. So, my challenge to all of you is to stop worrying about the battle against the media that we can't win, and start focusing on the part of the media, the battle against the media that we can win. Encourage your children to go into the arts, to go into the humanities. Encourage them to be writers and artists, poets and singers and musicians. Encourage them to tap in to the enormous cultural traditions, the artistic traditions that have given vibrancy to our faith for 1,500 years. Because it's their job to change the perceptions of this country. Thank you very much.